All right, hello.
Hello again, our second podcast already. A week has passed by on the Gap of Generations talk here about health, AI, and many other issues. And Lucas was just explaining how he lives in the desert and his sinuses get very dry. So tell us about this product you're using. It has saline and oregano in it.
Yeah, so let's see. The ingredients are just purified water, sodium chloride, and sodium bicarbonate. I guess I don't know why I'm smelling oregano. I just tried it. I used the regular version, and today I bought the extra strength version.
That's interesting.
Yeah,
Why would you smell oregano?
I would probably associate it because I've tried like nasal sprays that are oregano flavor as well. But yeah.
Yeah, and so our, we basically only have four tastes, right?
Yeah, I've heard that before.
So we only have salty, sour, sweet,
Hmm.
and then it's spicy, hot, and
Hmm.
cold, and then maybe MSG. There's some debate about it. So we actually taste with our smell. So we have hundreds of thousands, I think 300,000 um, olfactory receptors in our sinus cavity here, and um, very few tiny receptors molecules can basically identify very few molecules in the air, and that is often creating a memory. So we actually live by smell memories. So unfortunately, our virtual world that we created is free of smell.
Hmm.
So that's probably one of the biggest revolutions that's going to have to come here pretty soon, that we can actually smell in the virtual world. And I'm sure they're already working on that. But the question is how close that ever comes to nature. So when I go back to Germany, um, the smell is just the memories. You cannot reproduce that anywhere but in Germany.
Hmm.
And it's very interesting, how our bodies obviously create a response, emotional response, often fight or flight to certain smells that are very pungent, of course, right? Like, you know, rotting meat,
Yeah.
bad fish, right? So, because it's dangerous, right? That's deeply engraved in us. But I have not heard this one that, you have a memory of oregano, but it's possible. Why not? So, it's weird. Like, I remember associating like kindergarten with, crayon smell or something like that, right?
Hmm.
So
Are
every
you?
time you smell a crayon, you think about
Oh,
kindergarten.
yeah. Yeah.
So all of those things matter. In any case, you basically bring up a topic here, which is, sinus health and living in Washington. It's not any better than the desert, and using a neti pot regularly is extremely important. They make these really cool squish bottles now, so you don't need to buy the um, expensive spray there.
Hmm.
So the squish bottles basically flushed out. You should do it in the shower too. So it just removes all of the dust and pollen. And, that is, just what hangs up in there in the mucus and then creates inflammation, headaches, vision problems, you name it. So it's very important. And for that reason, we have post-nasal drip, right? Which most people complain about. The trouble with that is then you develop a cough or other symptoms if you have too much of it. But you have definitely stay ahead of that washing out game. You have an advantage. Yeah, so beautiful weather here today. I went swimming yesterday for the first time, and it was just so refreshing to spend time in the cold water. And I have no excuse to jump out here right now and get in that ice cold water. So Lucas, are you doing anything to shock your system? It's called hormesis, right?
Hmm.
So basically, starvation is a good one, and certainly cold water. So especially in the summer, people turn their chests upside down and take an ice water bath. That's a little bit too much for me, but jumping in cold water for a short amount of time is extremely refreshing. And the reason is because you're renewing your stem cells, you're activating your adipose tissue, and it's a very important mechanism that humans or nature has installed in evolution, because how else are you going to renew? Basically, we're sitting on our old fat because we constantly have access to food, right? When was the longest time you've starved?
I don't know. Yeah,
You
just
don't
like
know?
just like ever since I've been born, there's never been 24 hours where I haven't had clothes on me. You know, there's yeah, I haven't fasted or done anything, and I've been fortunate enough to have food on my
Yeah.
plate.
At your age,
Probably like 20 hours, probably gone a day sometime.
yeah. Um, yeah, at your age, my parents, they probably went through two famines. They lived in Ukraine, and Stalin, Lenin, they took everything away from them, left them with a little plot of land. That wasn't enough, and I was told, there were times where they were near death and they weren't allowed to hunt and everything else to sustain themselves. So they were just sitting around waiting for the next crop to just come up because they had nothing left in them. So those starvation periods, they're really good. And this YouTube channel about hunters and gatherers, did you get a chance to watch it?
No.
So yeah, we should talk about it next week. It's just amazing. So they're still hunter gatherers out in the wild there in Africa. They still live like they lived, 200,000 years ago. Well, close to that. And they talk about their daily fears and routines. And it's very, very interesting to think back that way when food wasn't available at the supermarket, and how good that actually is for you, right? Um, Obviously, what's interesting about that channel is, and I wish that we can talk about it in more detail, hopefully next week, is that they have the same fears. So all the fears we still have in us not getting food, right? They come from there's just simply not enough protein available. When you're a hunter and gatherer, you're highly relying on the next kill, and that might just not come. So that fear is deeply ingrained in us. So that's probably why protein makes us happy. And
Mm.
that is a very interesting way we're wired. So, you can starve on protein if you don't eat any carbs. Um, Matter of fact, if you are in the wild and all you eat is rabbit, you literally die of protein starvation. You
Mm.
aware of that?
Well, yeah, I mean, I'm aware of the basic nutrients that we need to survive.
Yeah, so there simply isn't enough fat in wild game, right?
Yep.
So humans somehow figured out how to sustain themselves with a very um, fat-rich meat. If you have a normal wild game that lives in the forest, so wild boar and deer, there's enough fat on there. But if you just have to survive on rabbit, it's very well known you will die of protein starvation. Also, there are essential carbohydrates. So we're always told carbohydrates are not essential, right?
I uh, I was told that, but if at any point I was told that, I threw it out the window. I am like I love carbs. So,
Sure,
yeah.
yeah, but are they essential? Meaning that you have to take them in on your diet, right?
Yeah, well, I'm not a dietitianary or whatever the expert would be in that field. I don't believe people are doing themselves a favor by going on ketosis, trying to lose weight, cutting out all carbs and then burning the fat for energy or whatever. I just don't believe in that. I think obviously there's good carbs and bad carbs. Like complex carbs would be good to eat if you're doing if you need energy for the next day, eat them at night so they break down over the course of the night and then you have the energy for the next day. Simple carbs, if you need them right now for breakfast or you need a snack after an afternoon crash or something. I'm also aware of the glucose response after if you are constantly giving yourself carbs and then burning them and carbs and then burning them. There's that afternoon crash that you get after you eat in the afternoon, like that first like big full carby meal. You crash a little bit afterwards. Um, yeah, that's all I know.
So are you eating carbs right away in the morning, or do you have a certain strategy there?
No, yeah, I do in the morning. But I'll try to I'll eat complex carbs the night before, like potatoes or rice or something. And then so I ideally I shouldn't need carbs in the next morning, so I could like do like a workout without eating breakfast because I have that dinner to fall back on. But then yeah, I eat like a fruit in the morning or like a muffin or something, and then I'll have like potatoes or rice to get me to lunch, and then at lunch, same thing as dinner.
Yeah, I think if you're active right away in the morning, if you don't have a sedentary job, you're actually active and working out, you can burn those calories. There's no doubt. But the average person, is still, like you said, full of storage from last night. Muscle store glycogen, so does the liver. And that's basically counterproductive. If you add more carbs on that, you go through the insulin roller coaster because that glucose has to be stored. So the less insulin response you get, the healthier basically your inflammatory processes will be. Insulin is highly inflammatory, causing a cortisol response. And
Hmm.
basically, you have to wait till your carb storage is used up. And typically that means when you're hungry. So,
Mm.
if you eat carbs in the morning out of habit and you're not hungry, so you're not
That
actually breaking the fast.
okay, so that might be an issue because I do feel kind of sluggish in the like right after breakfast and sometimes lunch too. Well, yeah, lunch as well. I think I'm
So
just like in my head, like I'd like to eat the eggs for protein, and then I'm just like, oh, I should get some carbs so I have energy later. But then maybe I shouldn't be doing that.
So yeah, I mean, my whole life I was struggling with breakfast. I asked myself, what in the world do I eat for breakfast? Because it's just so counterproductive. And we Germans, we love our big breakfast with rolls and baked bread and this and that. I mean, we eat protein for sure. We eat raw
Hmm.
meat and in for breakfast. Um, I just I now made my first own batch of quark. Uh, Remember
Nice.
quark?
Oh yeah,
It's
yeah,
kind of
yeah,
like in between yogurt and cottage cheese. It tastes so good. And
yeah.
anyways, it's definitely a protein dish, but then you add a huge roll with that, no. So bottom line is, I asked myself for 50 years, what in the world do I eat for breakfast? The answer is nothing. So
Hmm.
as soon as I discovered, having a huge, strong cup of coffee, not something diluted with fat in it. So I add coconut, the pulp. I have a very good brand here from Amazon. Um, just have those cans available. One can usually lasts 3, 4 days in the fridge. And that pulp is rich in, MCT oil, right? But
Yeah, I
also
was gonna
in
say.
fiber and other ingredients. So I don't like the whole bulletproof thing with just the MCT, which is isolated. There's other ingredients in there saturated fat that is very, very important to you. So coconut is the only fat, plant fat, that has 25% stearic acid in it. We need stearic acid for everything, for our heart. And interestingly, I just found this out a few days ago. You always think about adipose tissue, right? Fat tissue as being saturated fat. Uh-uh. Very little of it is saturated. Less than 25% of it. I was just blown away by that fact. By that fact. I mean, if you look at, disgusting um, pictures from people's interior. I just looked at a guy who, basically died of heart disease, and it just, everything is, all the organs are full of fat, right? Mesenteric fat, it's called. And that's, by the way, nature installed that because, you first grow the fat on your organs, because when you go through a period of starvation, what needs the energy, right? It's your heart, it's your liver, your kidneys. So those are the organs that first need the fat, and it's right on the organ available, for starvation. That's, because that's why we put it on first and then we lose it last. So that's why it's so hard for my age to lose weight. Bottom line is, I always thought that's saturated fat, and it's not. It's 20% or less, and it's mostly actually omega-6 inflammatory, and omega-9, which is unsaturated fat, so more like liquid fatty acid chains, and they basically have a lot of baggage attached to them, very inflammatory. Whereas, if you just eat saturated fat, which is in red meat and everything else, you basically don't have that problem. And so again, coconut is the only plant that has somewhat stearic acid in it. All plants have palmitic acid in it, and it's not going to help you out. So being a vegetarian is a whole nother topic. You might want to talk about that some other time. But what I'm saying here is that once I developed that routine with the big cup of coffee and I add the coconut and the butter into it, I didn't need to eat, right? So till noon, 1 o'clock. And, all of that given, I have a more sedentary
Right.
job. And, you know, some days I'm active and exercise in the morning. I will definitely need carbs earlier than that, but your body will tell you.
Yeah, for
And
me, I think like that sounds nice. Like not eating in the morning, like I'm not generally super hungry. It's just like you said, you have a more sedentary lifestyle. Like if I don't eat, like there's gonna be a good chance I'll lose weight that day. And my goal is to put on weight or just to maintain my weight, just because that's what I've struggled with.
so, look at the new show on Netflix about the sumo wrestlers, right? Their whole job is to put on weight, and they actually have healthy fat, subcutaneous fat. They have very good heart health, even though they're completely obese, right? That's their job, to be heavy as possible. Very similar to um, football player, right? They call it fullbacks or something. But American diets are not nearly as good as the sumo diets. They eat 20,000 calories a day. They drink a lot of beer. So yeah, I mean, if you want to put on weight, carbs is the name of the game. And that's, not sugar. It's, complex carbs, but obviously the sumo wrestlers drink a lot. I think they drink 10 beers a day. So it's very interesting.
Hmm.
So in any case, maintaining a certain level of weight is important for a lot of people who are too thin. But for most of us, when you get older, it's about starting yourself as long as possible. And usually means about minimum 14 hours. 16 is better, but 14 is usually good. And then you get hungry in the afternoon, and then you can eat protein and still don't eat carbs until dinner. And then the problem is the late night snack. So if you didn't get enough carbs during the day and your body knows that, you're still going to be hungry after dinner and you're still going to have a snack on protein. So then you're shortening you're just moving, you're shifting your carb window, right? So that's not productive either. Plus, it's harder to digest all of that while you're sleeping, right? So,
Hmm. Yep.
but yeah, you definitely want to try, I think in your case, to cut out carbs completely for the first meal. And then, in Germany, actually, so we call little piece Frühstück, right? Whereas in English, it's called breaking the fast, right? So we don't break the fast in German breakfast, the very early breakfast. That's why it's called little piece. And then people had a second real breakfast at 10 o'clock, usually when they were working out and about in the construction site, you name it, on the field. That's when they got their first real meal in. And that's basically the most efficient way of sustaining your energy levels. And then had actually the biggest meal for lunch or late lunch. And then in the evening, supposedly Germans didn't used to eat that much. They didn't cook more meals, right? We call it Abendbrot, which is evening bread. So um, basically, the biggest meal was always for lunch. And my dad always took home a big can of thermos, with whatever when he had to go to work when he couldn't come home. Even I did that at school and stuff.
Hmm.
So yeah, so that's probably a better way of eating. In any case, counting carbs is never fun. It's a very emotional food, and I know if I don't eat wheat for a while, it's very, very emotional. I need it. But there's good carbs, and I mean, so I'm trying to. The Swedish hard bread is really good. Do you have access to that?
You're talking about those that very like dense like I call it just a German bread. It's
Yeah,
like
that's
dense
the
little slices.
pumpernickel whole grain. That's hard to digest.
Oh,
That's good stuff too. But the Swedish made this hard bread. It lasts
like
forever.
like a cracker.
Yeah, it's like a cracker. Yeah.
Hmm.
But it's a very good substitute and it's much easier to digest. So because it's been baked so many times. The problem with the wheat is, that's why pizza is so hard to digest, is the undercooked wheat.
Hmm. Yeah.
You basically, you look at the dough of a pizza, it's pretty much raw in the middle, as long as, I mean, if it's a thin crust, right? So that's why a lot of cultures, they make sure that their bread is really thin or double baked, right? So, a muffin, there's probably a fair amount of very hard to digest raw gluten in the middle of it.
Yeah. Yeah. Definitely.
So all of those things matter when it comes to wheat. You definitely want to cook the heck out of it.
Yeah. So
Um,
one thing I want to talk about, because like so much of what we've been talking about these last few minutes, like all connects. It all comes back to the start of this saline spray, because the reason why that reminded me is the wheat is because I have like I struggle to breathe through my nose. And like I'm pretty much like say like 50% of the time a mouth breather. And there's like I don't know what the percentage is, but I'm gonna throw like a number out there, like 80% more likely for every single uh what is it, chronological or not chronic like heart disease, like all health diseases, if you breathe through your mouth instead of your nose, because it filters through your brain in a different way and it's more efficient. And so there's like so many things that connect, like for instance, when we were younger, or not younger, like generations ago, our ancestors, they actually used to chew for 4 to 6 hours a day, because they weren't able to cook their meat like we can cook our food. And so since we don't chew as much, because all our food's processed, right, due to industrialization, um, our jaws are actually smaller, so they're not as wide. And so our teeth are we have way too many teeth for how big our mouths actually are because we're supposed to be chewing for 4 to 6 hours a day. So that muscle widens the jaw, right? And if you're just clenching your teeth like this, it doesn't stimulate the growth of your jaw. It has to be down on one side because we only chew on like one side at a time. So if you want to like bite on something, it can't be on both sides, just on one side to like widen your jaw, right? So you've got that, and then you've got like allergies and like nose problems. There's like I think it's a large portion of the population actually could go and get the deviated septum nose surgery. Some are worse than others. I'm probably somewhere in the middle, but I struggle to breathe through my nose because of the just the way my nose is crooked, and then also the allergies. Like I don't know if I'm allergic to wheat or if it's dairy, but the small nasal pathway, and then the like sinus is always being congested. That's a lot of the reason why I breathe through my mouth. And then the reason why the mouth comes into a factor, like how big your jaw is just because the upper palate affects the way your mouth is like structured and everything. And so if you're breathing through your mouth, like if you remember when I was younger, if everyone doesn't know, this is my dad. So when I was younger, my mouth, like I had like a much longer face. I mean, I still sort of do, but I think it's because I mouth breathed a lot. So your mouth like literally just droops down, right? And I didn't chew a lot, I didn't eat a lot of meat, but like over time, that's what happens, right? So I'm trying to correct that. Like if you didn't know, like in the 1950s, I'm getting all this information from James Nestor, by the way. He's like not a scientist or anything, but he is someone who got interested in this topic and self-educated himself, and he's like leading in this field, but he's not actually a scientist. But he was talking about on a podcast on Joe Rogan that in the 1950s, people didn't get braces the way we get braces now. They would go and get a device that would sit inside their jaw when they're sleeping, and it would stimulate chewing, right? And then it would actually just widen their jaw. So then their teeth would come in, and they'd be straight. So now, but they eventually they figure out a way to make our braces, our teeth straight through braces in a way that's like more fittable for everyone. They just throw braces on, tighten them, and you're good. You don't have to handcraft, uh, this sort of jaw device so that your teeth can fall in straight. But what that did is it stopped us from widening our mouths, right? Because of the food, and you have nothing that's widening our mouth. So now we have all these, breathing problems because our mouths are so small and our teeth come in crooked unless you fix it with braces. So all that connects. And, if you're breathing through your mouth and like it all connects to exercising and your performance there, the best way to breathe for exercise performance is, I think, 6 seconds in and 6 seconds out breathing. So what is that? That's that's like 6 breaths a minute, right? That's actually more efficient, right? It's like I don't know why our instinct is wrong and telling us to breathe more, but what we're doing, you're just breathing in oxygen and breathing out oxygen. And so people who are having panic attacks, they start breathing more and more. I don't know why that's our instinct, but all they're doing is they're just having more oxygen when what we need is carbon dioxide because that is what allows the constriction and it's what allows us to offload oxygen into our body. And so that's why, like, I think uh, if you're having a panic attack, you breathe into a bag, so you start breathing, like you get more carbon dioxide, so you can actually offload the oxygen into your body. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong. This is because I'm just a average Joe. But yeah, that's like all stuff that I've been learning, and that's why I think if I'm able to, see what allergies I have, see if I could get that thing to widen my palate, or do the deviated septum nose surgery, or just generally train to breathe through my nose more, like a small piece of tape over my mouth before I go to sleep, so that I can get that habit of closing my jaw. Because the more you breathe through your nose, the wider it gets.
Have you
That
tried one of those butterfly band-aids?
No, but that's something I should start using as well. Yeah, and just all of that I think will just make me healthier, right? Because there's less risk for all the chronic diseases, and then my athletic performance should go up as well. But yeah, it's
That's a very interesting topic. Yeah, I have never put that together, that the lack of jaw activity is creating a whole new anatomy that's affecting our breathing sinuses. It makes sense. Yeah, it's definitely so. Yeah, I mean, my book on omega-3 coming out soon is definitely, subtitled as, how we just can't keep up with evolution and
Hmm.
all these changes of modern way of lifestyle diet are affecting our anatomy. That's a very good observation. So, but the bottom line is that deviated septum or anatomic problems. I think for most people, it really is an inflammatory status and just getting rid of the pollutants, whether it's dust or pollen or whatever it is, um, through the neti pot is
Hmm.
definitely, you can overdo it. So, I would not recommend doing it every day or several times a day, and do it in the shower.
Hmm.
So I think that typically 2 or 3 times a week is good enough.
Okay.
Um, and the reason, some people get worse and worse, and every year gets worse. Different allergy seasons, you blame it on, this Scotch broom or that cedar tree or whatever. The problem is it just piles up. So, you start out with an inflammatory index of 30 to 1, and then, you add another allergen, and you're going to get symptoms. If you start out with an inflammatory index of 5 to 1, it takes a lot longer to get there, and you're more, what do you say, adaptable to.
Hmm.
So what I'm saying is, you know, Washington is horrible when it comes to pollen and tree pollen, and a lot of people who move here, they complain. And I think the first years or so, I did not have a problem. It started later, but then again, I got older too, right? So it has to do with your general state of inflammation, autoimmunity with age. But I think the
Yeah.
neti pot is definitely a solution, um, at least for short term. For long term, it's, omega-3 in my opinion. And this year, after 2 years of taking it, I can report that I had almost no symptoms,
Really.
whereas everybody else was freaking out as usual. On another
You're talking
topic,
about symptoms to the pollen and the allergies.
allergy,
Yeah.
seasonal allergy in
Seasonal
the
allergy.
spring, right? So again, everybody's different, reacting slightly different. But if you have post-nasal drip, that is a good thing. I often notice when I'm on the golf course, there's a lot of snot coming out. Obviously, I'm breathing a lot of pollen on the golf course, and the body just wants to clear it. That's a good thing,
Hmm. Hmm.
Um, it has to come out this way or another. So you might as well help it out a bit with a neti pot. Yeah, so this is squeeze bottle, and you can get it on Amazon.
Okay. Yeah.
But yeah, let me know how that works. And actually, I'm about ready here to jump into the cold water.
Okay.
And
Yeah.
it's once you're in, it's fine. I mean, you can only
Yeah.
stay in a few minutes. This water is so cold.
Yeah.
But the you feel so refreshed afterwards, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it's
It's
supposed to
just
make you happier, because the level of um I think your dopamine levels correlate with how much pain you feel like during it. So afterwards, it's supposed to go up and you
I
feel
mean, yeah, and back to the hunter-gatherers, right? Not only did they not have supermarkets, they didn't have showers either, right? With warm water.
oh yeah.
So they just jump in the cold river, and that's all
Yeah.
there's to it.
Yeah.
And you get used to it,
Yeah.
and it feels good. I mean, it's just the initial getting in, which is like, ooh. But
Right.
once you're in, it's fine.
But that has a mental benefit too because you're strengthening your discipline because it's something you don't want to do, but you're forcing yourself to do it, and it has health benefits.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, there's a lot of topics to go through, and these things that I mentioned that I want to explore to see if I can make myself breathe more efficiently. Um, they all don't have a deadline, right? I've known about these for so long, and
What doesn't have a deadline?
it's like a goal that doesn't have a deadline, right? I could live my whole life never fixing this and breathing through
Yeah,
my mouth, right? It
right.
might be a shorter life, but I could do it. So, getting around to it and, what you prioritize and what you value, that's a whole nother topic for a different day, but we'll see as these
Well,
go on.
yeah, I mean, part of what I always talk about with my omega-3 is that the human body is built extremely resilient. We can work on, 5%, 3%. Otherwise, we wouldn't be walking on this planet and,
Hmm.
having to go through multiple famines. And that's, by the way, why women gain weight so much faster is because, they need to sustain a pregnancy through a famine and
Hmm.
sustain a race, right?
Hmm.
Whereas men, we're built more lean because we have to go out and do the hunting. So all of those things are evolutionary, but it's no longer the case. And we're no longer in that, hunter and gatherer mode. And I wish we could just kind of go through the video a little bit together, play it, and then go through it, and then talk about these issues, which are, it's just so interesting. I mean, really, it's in us. I mean, it's deeply in us. We are hunters and gatherers. We are not farmers. That only came very recently, 10, 15,000 years ago. And the only reason we're still
Hmm.
living like that is because we figured out how to grow beef. And
Right.
no, grass-fed beef is put on a feedlot and we're all poisoned and have no more access to fresh fish. So all of those things are extremely important to us. And we're not evolving at any speed that we really need to change our metabolism. But biohack is the
Yeah.
key here.
Yeah.
We are looking for little biohacks here and there to make this life definitely more efficient.
Yeah, well, maybe that's a good segue into next episode. We can both watch it or go over it together in the next time we meet.
Awesome. Yeah.
Sweet.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I'll let you know how the jump here goes, and I'll see
All
you
right.
next.
Okay. See you next time.
Bye bye.
Bye bye.